Welcome in, listeners. This is Margin Mavens, a podcast hosted by Steph and Kayla, where we share our thoughts on all things literature. Today's episode is about Bochica by Carolina Flórez-Cerchiaro, a story of a woman named Antonia who, when searching for answers about her mother's death, stumbles onto something much more darker. The content for today's talk contains mentions of sacrificial rituals and murder. Please take care of yourselves and only listen if such topics do not make you uncomfortable. Now make sure to grab a snack and a drink. Unless you're driving, then remember 10 and 2 and dig in with us while we get started. First and foremost, the kind of myth surrounding this one, right? It's taking place in Colombia. Are these myths real? Because I don't know anything about Colombian folklore.
Yeah.
They very much are. They were like one of the things that made me want to write the book. It's like all the mysticism surrounding this place that, you know, the myths are real, but then, like, you have people saying how the place is like haunted and there are like ghosts roaming around the place. That part may or may not be real, but the foundation of the muiscas and Bochica as a deity, um, and the place being sacred for these people, that's like very much real.
Gotcha. Going into kind of the like technique or the writing process and everything, is this your debut novel?
It is, yeah. It's not the first book that I've written, but it's the first one to be published. And I think a lot of writers will tell you this, that not like every time their first book, the first book that people actually get to read, is not really the first book they've ever written. It
hmm
happens sometimes, but it's like for the majority of us, it's like we've been doing this for a while, whether like in a professional manner or not. We've pretty much been writing for forever. But yeah, Bochica for me is like the first book to ever come out.
And what was kind of the like journey into publishing for Bochica?
Well, I think the journey specifically for this book started in 2021, which is when I started drafting it. But by then, I'd already signed with an agent and I was even like working on a different book that we were trying to sell. But, with the pandemic, everything sort of like went like off the rails. And I just wanted to try something different because up until that point, like the book I was working on before this one was a romance novel, but we ended up not selling that one. And I just like wanted to try something different. And horror for me has always felt like a safe place because it's the one genre that I've been reading my entire life. Since like I was 7 or 8, I've been reading horror novels, especially the gothic genre. It's like where I started. So it just felt like a good thing to try out for myself to see if I could like after years of reading it, try to write something within the genre. So I was like, yeah, why not? And we were living through like pretty much scary times back
Yeah.
then.
For sure.
So it just felt like the right time for me.
Right.
So I drafted it. I started drafting it in 2021, and then we sold it in 2023. And yeah, here we are, like almost 2 years later. Um, so yeah, that's sort of like the summary of what happened with this book and how it came to be.
Gotcha.
What does your research process look like? Like, are you just going off of things you've heard, stories you've heard, or are you reaching out to like educators? What does that sort of look like for you?
For this book specifically, because I started writing it when we were like at home and we
hmm
couldn't really go out, there was a lot of like me digging through archives, like online archives, to like try to lay the foundation of like the culture and the very much like real aspects of the book when it comes
Right.
to like the setting and the mysticism surrounding it and the culture, the Muisca culture. Like there was a lot of like, like reading books and
Mhm.
seeing if I can find like any resources online or like getting books shipped. and whatnot. But so yeah, it took me, perhaps weren't if we hadn't
Yeah,
been in the pandemic, it would have taken me a little less
less time.
time to like do the research, because I could have gone to like talk to actual people
Right,
and like go to libraries, which I couldn't do. So I had to like, for those first couple months, the only thing that I could do was like try to find as much as I could online. But there's enough information online, so it wasn't as much of a struggle as it could have been, which is great. But yeah, it was a lot of like researching prior to starting drafting the book,
right.
but also like as I went through and revised the book, and then after we sold it with my editor, I kept on doing research. Um, so yeah, uh, it's I'd say there. I don't feel like the book feels like a history book. But there's definitely a lot that you as the author need to know in order
Mm-hmm.
for things to make sense for the reader, even if they don't end up on the page.
Right.
Um, so yeah.
Was there anything that you found out when you were researching that really like surprised you?
Well, this place is a place where people go to like unalive themselves. Um, in the country, like people will go there to do it. So like I remember when I was drafting, I would find articles like pretty much every week of like news of like people, you know, going there to like end their lives. And that was very shocking for me, because it's like super, super common. And I knew this beforehand, but since I was like drafting the book and actively researching things all the time, I would find like once or twice every week someone would go there to like, you know, kill themselves. Or
Yeah.
sometimes people say like they don't really go to like unalive themselves, but there's something, people say that there's something that just like pulls you
Mm-hmm.
down, and sometimes people don't really want to like end their lives, but they do because it's like haunted or whatever.
Right.
But that was like a very like shocking part, and something like really hard to like read constantly. um Even though I knew that was like some of like the darker parts of like the history of the place and what it is even now. um so yeah, that was like one of the, not really like shocking, because I already knew, but it was just like hard to read. Um,
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I mean that
that's
sounds
that's
incredibly
tough.
difficult to do on like a weekly basis, especially while you're objectively writing something that's bringing you a lot of happiness, and then the like topic or the inspiration of that thing is something that is causing a lot of other people a lot of pain.
Right.
Um did that kind of ever come into like how you were going to approach this story, especially as you were like reading more and more of it? Was there ever a point where you were like, "Oh, I need to handle this a specific way" and stuff?
yeah, I think one of the two things that happened for me was that sometimes I had to like sort of like step back and take more breaks than I would normally would, if I wasn't really like reading this really darker things. So that was one thing. But then the second thing was like I never wanted to come across as if like the place and the muisca were the ones, like causing
Right.
all of the things. Like I never wanted them to like be portrayed as the bad guys and the place to be portrayed as a bad place. Because I think that's something that tends to happen when you have like this stories where like it's a haunted house or a haunted hotel or like some sort of like haunted place that's built on top of this like holy grounds for native people or sacred
Mm-hmm.
places, that like maybe these houses and these places shouldn't have been there to begin with. and it's another form of colonialism as well. So I never wanted, like these people and the very much real history behind it to be seen as like, oh, but it's because of them, because they use this place to like, like do the rituals or whatever. I never wanted the culture to be the one to blame, if that makes sense. So that was something, that I wanted to like separate and to sort of like have in the book, some places where it's like made clear that this is not me blaming,
Right.
what happened before, like even before the house was built and
Hmm.
people started going there. So that was like something that was like very important for me as I was writing.
Yeah, well, I think you managed to do that really well,
And
even
I think
through
that's,
like.
oh,
Mhm.
go on.
Oh, I was just saying, even through Antonia's kind of journey throughout all of this, she has that same realization herself of like it's not the land, it's kind of what happened to it.
Right.
And so that was incredibly interesting to
Yeah, and
like
I
see.
and for me, like this this is not a spoiler because we're not there yet, but it's one of the reasons why the book ends the way it ends.
Right.
Um, and even if, like in real life, if you look up the house and the place, like it's it's very different to what happens in the book in the ending. But for me, it was like very important to end it that way, exactly because of this, because it's one of the like the main things that I wanted to, people to take from this book is like
Hmm.
maybe this place is like the land isn't haunted. It's us coming to it that's
Hmm.
Right.
haunting it. Um, so yeah.
This might be a slightly spoilery
It's
question.
always you, Kayla.
It is always me. Was there anything that you had to cut from the book that you really wanted to keep in, but you just couldn't?
Well, the book was much longer. Like the book was almost 100,000 words, and I thank my editor a lot because she's very good at like seeing the story for like what it needs to be, and I think the
Hmm.
book is much better because of it. But I actually had two endings. So there was like one ending, like the ending that ends up happening in the book,
Right.
and then there was like an alternate ending. Um, but yeah, I don't know how to say it without like spoiling the actual ending. But the second ending was like from the house's POV.
Okay.
Um, and you got to read from like the house's POV. Um, but I'm glad it didn't make it into the book because I really like how like the ending turns
Yes.
out, and like it really enhances that feeling of, oh, what I was saying before, like this, it's us, like we're the
Right.
problem, not
Yeah.
maybe not these places. But yeah, this, the second ending, it was something that we actually cut out in the last pass before the book went to like copy edits basically, and it was really hard to let go. And then like I was talking to my agent and she was like, maybe you can, send it to your newsletter subscribers if they ever want to read like a bonus chapter, epilogue, or whatever. So maybe I'll do that in the future. But yeah, that was like, because it had been like ever since I started drafting the book in 2021, that had been like part of the book. So it was
Right.
like really hard to let go after like so many years of having it there. And some people genuinely liked it. And my editor was like, I really like this, but I think the other ending just like makes more sense.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
What's kind of as you're writing, and I think this will be the bridge into the spoiler section, but what is your process as you're writing? We've met a lot of authors, and some of them are very meticulous with how they plan and edit and all of that, and others are not. So what is your kind of path and how do you do it?
I think for me, especially with this book because it required a lot of like research. There was, and I think I touched on this earlier, but I needed to lay a foundation and I needed to know what I could do within the, like the constraints of like taking this
Mhm.
culture and taking this place and what was possible for me and what wasn't. So I spent like a month or two just like researching and then like also like brainstorming and like trying to come up with an outline. But my outlines aren't really super detailed. It's like, like one page of like bullet points and that's it. And
Mhm.
there are people who like know every single twist and every single turn of the story. I'm not one of those people, but I generally know the beginning, middle, and end. Like I know those 3 points, and I just like find ways to get myself from one point to the other. And then it's like I don't really have like a routine. I try to write every morning because I'm a morning person and I feel like in the mornings I'm like my brain just like works better. And I just sort of like have word count goals that I try to hit when I'm actively drafting. It's usually like 1,500 words or 2,000 words, and I just try to make my way through the story as fast as I can so that I can get it on the page. And then I start like revising, and
Right.
I will do another outline and see, oh, maybe like I thought the story was going this way, but it ended up going that way. So I need to like re-outline to sort of like have sort of like see the structure of the story in every draft. So I do multiple outlines while I'm drafting and revising just to see how pieces are like moving, and to try to like, like I need everything to make sense and I need the puzzle pieces to sort of like fall in place. So it's a lot of like, I wouldn't say it's like the most organized thing. It's just like how my brain works. Um, but yeah, I think I'm like somewhere in the middle, like some people just like start writing and they don't need anything and they don't do research, or they'll do research like whenever they
Crazy
finish
people.
drafting the book. Yeah. And then there are some others that spend hours and hours and weeks and months like doing an outline, and they know like sometimes their outlines are the size of my like first draft, which is crazy. But like if that works for them, that's like fine. So I
Right.
would say I'm somewhere in the middle. I need to know like where I'm going, but I don't necessarily need to know like every point and every twist. And I also can't just like start writing. Like, oh, I had this idea. Let's just see. No, I can't do that. I need to like have a sense of structure. But it's not like it's somewhere in the middle, I think.
And when you get to the like edits or the revising and stuff like that, are you a like fully digital person? Like you just do everything on your like document? Or I've seen some people like print out their entire like manuscript kind of thing. Where do you fall on that like spectrum?
I've tried printing out stuff, but I'm just like, sometimes I'm like halfway through and I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to like type this in and
Yeah.
it's gonna be much work. And I
Yeah.
just like stop. But sometimes it helps. Like if I'm stuck, I will print out like a chapter or two, or just like the section where I'm like having trouble, and just like seeing it differently, and like having that freedom to like write and like scratch things like with your hand.
Yeah.
That sort of like helps me like unlock something um in my brain that maybe the computer or just like with, because I'm doing this like all the time and I'm
Mhm.
spending so many hours in front of a screen, like maybe like trying to trick my brain into feeling that's different, that sort of like helps. Sometimes I will sometimes draft. That's something that I do. I will draft by hand a lot. Sometimes like pages and pages, and I have to type that in, and I hate myself when I'm like trying to type it in. But yeah, sometimes I, like just, you know, every book sort of like makes you try different things. Like I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
say that every book I've written and every book I've revised, like it's been the same. But sometimes these like tricks do help. Especially when, like because I've been working on this book for so long. When I started working with my editor when we sold it, I had to revise it again and again and again and again. And you just sort of like get tired of like staring at it, and you just like need to do whatever it takes
Right.
to get the work done. And like sometimes mind mapping helps.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes like doing writing sprints and like forcing yourself to like lock in and do the
Yes.
work helps. So yeah, I'm always open to try things out, and sometimes they don't work, and sometimes they end up being like more work than I want to do. But I'm always like trying something, if it's gonna help me, especially when I'm like in the like in the home stretch of deadlines where I'm like
Mm-hmm.
hating everything, and I don't even like the book anymore. I will probably like try anything that you tell me that works.
Mm-hmm.
I will try it.
Well, I like that you're willing to like be experimental with it because I think especially with social media and the platforms that we now have of authors sharing their like techniques and everything, it is really nice. I think that there's more and more authors willing to try out other things and not just what has been working for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Um
and I think sometimes, like prescriptive advice is like really bad because there's not a single way in which you can do
Right.
something, and there's no one right way in
yeah.
which you can do something. Like you can do, like the sky is the limit. You do you, but I think that if you don't try it out for yourself,
Right.
you won't ever know if it works or it doesn't. Or maybe, like some people have this like index cards. I've tried that and I use those, but mine are not as detailed
Yeah, or like the
as
sticky notes
what,
on a wall
yeah,
that are like color
exactly.
coded. I'm like that looks so cool.
That
What
looks
if
very
one
cool, but
falls?
Yeah.
but like the color coding thing, it just I can't do that. Like
Oh, I
I've
love
seen
color
people.
coding.
Yeah, but for me, like having those things and like seeing those things on a wall works. I just don't need the color coding part. But
Mhm.
sometimes people are like, oh, but that doesn't really work. Well, try it for yourself, and you can always like adjust it to whatever works
Right.
for you. Um, so I think that's important because again, there's no right way in which you can write a book, edit a book, get published. Like there are many, many ways. And I think that's important for us authors. I mean, I'm not, it's not that I have like this huge career or whatever. I'm barely starting out. But I think one of the things that have helped me to get here is to be open, to try things out and to, like pivot. Because again, I was writing romance. And if I hadn't made that switch to, like the horror genre, maybe we wouldn't be having this conversation at all.
Right.
So it's important to, like this industry is hard as it is. So you need to sort of like be good with like adjusting and changing and moving around, if this is something that you actually want to pursue professionally, because it's hard. It's very hard. I'm sure you know because you've had these conversations with other authors. So it's always good to like keep your mind open to like trying new things, changing and adjusting as you go.
Um, are you thinking about trying out different genres as you continue in your author journey?
Well, I think yeah. But for now, I'm staying within like the speculative fiction
Mm-hmm.
genre. It's a place I really feel comfortable with because I've been reading and consuming it for so many years. But definitely, I mean, I wouldn't say anywhere near like the next year or like the following couple years.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely want to do romance again. And maybe try other things. I mean, my tastes are like constantly changing, so who knows, maybe tomorrow I'll wake up and be like, oh, I want to write a fantasy or
Yeah.
a sci-fi or who knows. But yeah, I'm open to that as well.
Ladies, it is time
Yeah.
for my favorite part of the episodes always, where we get to
Spoilers.
dig into the actual book. Okay. Now, I have a question that's going to start off with kind of the like heavier undertones of it all.
Okay.
But throughout the book we have a lot of very blatant misogyny by some of the people, and there's also very blatant kind of like racism, especially dealing with Carmela because she's darker and everything. How different, because this is based in 1923, do we believe that like Hispanic culture has developed past 1923?
Wow.
Oh, I
You
think,
just came out swinging
yeah.
immediately.
I immediately thought of it when I was reading the book. I was like, this is historical, but this is still a thing.
It's yeah, I think I have like the short answer would be like it hasn't really changed.
Yeah.
But I think that yeah, it's hard because, I live in Colombia and people are always like, "Oh, but we're like mixed race. Like we, like we have this like huge like variety of like
Yeah.
colors and people and we all look so different, but we're all the same." And it's like, yeah, maybe i I mean there's definitely racism, but it's more like colorism, what
Mhm.
Yes.
comes into place and what you see manifested in these cultures. And then like colorism is tied to also like classism.
Mhm.
And it's basically like the lighter your skin is, the better. Like it doesn't matter if we're like mixed race, but if I'm like lighter than you when it comes to like the skin tone, I'm better than you, or I deserve more than you do. So you see it a lot. Um, and people are always, again, they are always like, oh, racism, that's not a thing. That's something like that happens in Europe or in America. But it's so not true. And it's cruel, because it's so ingrained in our culture that we don't even see it, but they're like expressions and things that people use all the time. And I think it's worse. I mean, I guess it's different from what happens in the US, but
Mhm.
in many ways it might be worse because it's so like it's just like something that we don't even think about, because there's these people telling you, oh, there's no racism because we're like multicultural and we're like mixed race, and like we are all like, we come from like indigenous people and the black people who came like with the Spanish colonization. And people believe that, and they think they are allowed, and they have like these privileges, and they are not aware of like, like they are part of the problem as well, which is something that
Yes.
Mhm.
happens in the book too, which is like every single person in that book is like part of the big problem.
Right.
So yeah, I think it hasn't really changed, and it's sad to say, but it feels like the book feels very relevant even today, um, because it's pretty much the same. And I don't think that happens only in Colombia. It's all across Latin
Everywhere.
America, and it's even worse in places like Argentina, for example, because they are even like their skins are like even lighter than they are in other parts in Latin America. And they have a lot of like Italians and German people living there. So you have people like with light colored eyes and all that stuff, and it's like even worse there. But people are just not aware, or they don't want to see it.
Yeah, sorry to come out the gate with that.
You really did.
It was just buzzing in my head, all right? I immediately always want to call out Latin American cultures and everything for kind of always embracing this inclusivity, but it not including those who are darker complexions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, and I think like that's something that I always feel. maybe not responsible, maybe isn't the word for it, but I always feel as though like not calling it out, being somebody that's a lot lighter feels worse than if I were like
Mm-hmm.
actively perpetrating it. Um
Because
so
you're part of the problem. You
yeah.
like sometimes it's like even worse when you're not doing anything about it and when you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Because yeah, you just hide behind this, oh, inclusivity disguise,
Mhm.
and we're all the
Right.
same and we're mixed race, and what are you talking about? That
Yeah.
just happens in America or whatever. But it's like no, and it's even worse when it just like, because it's like an undercurrent of like
Yeah,
this
it's like woven
subtle
into the
things.
actual like
Yeah,
Culture.
fabric of the society. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I turn into the really cheesy like 80s slogan where it's like see something, say something. And then
yeah.
I can't help it. Um Leading into kind of the conversations about the actual book and the plot and everything. So we have Antonia, where she is a very, from the beginning, you can see that she's kind of pushed out of what is considered proper by society. She's in a really interesting situation where she works at a Catholic school, but not being Catholic. And
Mm-hmm.
so she's kind of having to teach these kids about prayer and about all of these kind of ideals while she doesn't carry them herself. And you can tell that she's a lot more analytical. She's a lot more of somebody that is thinking about the science of it all, right? She's wanting to explain to the kids, like, it might not be the devil, it might be this other thing or whatever. What kind of came into play when creating Antonia as a character?
I think Antonia, like we're not the same. Um, but thank God we're not the same. But it's a lot. I was definitely drawing, especially in that part, like with, like her being so resentful towards religion and all of these things. Like I was drawing a lot from my own experiences growing as Catholic, and me, like I'm not Catholic anymore. I don't really practice any religion. But it's just like the things that I knew while I was growing up and how it restrained me in so many ways. And there's definitely a lot of like religious trauma from drawing from my own personal experiences, that went into the book. So there was that. And it was also important for me to like have this character who doesn't really like, she doesn't really believe in anything, to like have her, sort of like have to confront the fact that maybe, like even if she doesn't believe in these things, they exist and they are part of her world and they are like playing a role within it, and how we have to come to terms with that. Because like even if you don't believe in the supernatural, and when I say the supernatural, I mean like religion and ghosts or whatever, they still exist and they still permeate our worlds in so many ways, and sometimes for good or for bad or whatever. Um, and how, like even if you don't want to be part of it, you sometimes end up being a part of it without even knowing, because they are there. And how we, like what we do if we don't believe, like how we handle those things even if
Right.
we don't actually believe in them. That was something that for me, like creating her character was like very important, because at some point she has to like confront the fact that her mother belonged in this cult and had this, like beliefs, whether
Mm-hmm.
real or not. And how she sort of like has to like navigate that path and come out alive. Um, and like understand that they are always going to be there even if she doesn't want to be part of it.
Yeah, I can definitely see how, I mean, we see it being very difficult with Antonia the entire time, where she's having
Right.
to really navigate the supernatural world, but also the very real people that believe in the supernatural world, because she kind of has
Yeah.
this moment of realizing, like, oh, everybody around me is kind of playing me. because they're
Yes.
not telling me about this belief that they have. And so we're all viewing it as like, my mom was incredibly sick and this is why she did it, right? And there's not the like bigger message that comes around it. I think one of the most complicated relationships in the book is between Antonia and her father,
Mm-hmm.
right? What's going on there? What was the inspiration?
Well, I think that that came from my love of the Gothic and
Mm-hmm.
how women in it are often gaslighted.
Yeah,
Because there's a lot of gaslighting coming, and you would think, like her father would want to like protect her, and like he is in a way protecting her because he's like trying to keep her like
from looking into it and
away
stuff.
from like,
Yeah,
yeah. So some of the gaslight comes from that, but it's also like how scary it is when you have this one person that you are supposed to like rely on, that is like not trusting you, making you
Mm-hmm.
feel even worse and making you feel powerless. Because I
and
feel like,
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. And there's a lot of conversation in the book about, like women in power and what they do to achieve said power, but also women being powerless. And I think Antonia, like she was growing up in a place that was definitely haunted in many different ways, in like very much real ways, but also in this like supernatural way. And then, like her mother was never around, and then her father only existed to like worship her mother. And
Mm-hmm.
then her mother dies, and she's left with Carmela and her father. And this like her her father, she ends up like having to take care of him. Um, so it was like, you know, for me, it was very interesting to like explore and to take the horror to a level where it was like not just coming from, like the supernatural side of things, but also like you grew up in a haunted house. Your dad doesn't really believe you, or is like gaslighting you and making you feel even worse. What do you do? Um, so yeah, I think her father is there sort of like as a horror element as well in many times, especially when she says she had to like press pause in her life and her plans to
Mm-hmm.
have to care for someone who hasn't really cared for you when you
Yeah.
needed him. So yeah, it that definitely like that doesn't have anything to do with like my personal experiences, but I just thought when I was thinking about the horror and what it was going to be in the book, I thought, like having him also like not supporting her and not helping her and not making her feel better would be something very terrifying, because it's very much real and it's something that people actually go through
Yep.
in different circumstances, of course. But yeah, he is there sometimes to like be the horror. um,
this one goes out to the people with daddy issues.
And
yeah.
the eldest daughters
Yeah,
Yeah,
shout
who
out. This
have
and
one
to
was
they
for
stop
you.
everything.
Um, Kayla, did you have a question before I monopolize more time?
Yes. Well done. Um, let's see. What do I want to start with? Did you ever, and this spoiler-esque, not really big spoiler, but did you ever play with the idea of Alejandro being the villain in any capacity? Because for a while there he was giving, I was like, man, like if he turns around and he betrays Antonia, like I would not be surprised, but I would be upset.
Mm-hmm.
um yes, but it was never that he was like an actual villain. It was more so that there was a point when I was drafting the book, or I think I was editing with my editor, when we had a conversation and we were like, what if she doesn't really like him at all and never really gets to the point where she like trusts him, and
Mm-hmm.
they go on this thing together and they have like this like special moments, because they end up becoming friends at some point in the book, or they are like close at some point. But we had this conversation where it was like, what if Antonia is only using him, sorry,
Yeah.
um, and not really wanting to like have any sort of relationship with him. She just wants to use him because she knows he has information.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that one time when we had that conversation, but we ended up like, of course, like not doing that. But I think it would have been fun if he was like a villain. Uh, but I think it would have made their relationship much more complicated
Yeah.
than it ends up being. So, but yeah, I think yeah, that would have been fun to write, to like play with him, like like betraying her at some point.
Right.
Um,
I like the pretty straightforwardness of their relationship.
You would, because you're a
I
romance
like
girly.
I like that they could have like you could have easily brought in a like miscommunication trope. But I like that you clear that up with both of them very quickly. Of she comes forward and is like, I didn't
I
actually want to
wasn't
tell
gonna
you a
tell you
story.
anything. Yeah.
And he's like, all right, well, like now I'm still gonna help you, but like, dang it, dude. And then we find out his
yeah,
kind of deeper involvement in it. I liked that they were very honest with each other kind of the
and
whole
yeah,
time. That was
yeah, because
nice.
I never really wrote them, like you could argue there's like a romance thread in the book, but I don't, I mean, yeah, because they kiss, and there's definitely this like attraction between them and this like
Mm-hmm.
chemistry. But the book ends and you never really know what happens between them.
I
So,
know.
like my agent says, it's like a ship that never sails.
Yeah.
And I've been having these conversations with people as we approach publication. And it's like, but do they end up being like getting together? Like, are they together? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe, like maybe it was just like, like something that came to be because of the circumstances and the high stress, and Antonia just like liked him and she wanted to kiss him, and like maybe they went out a couple times and it didn't work out, like I
No,
don't
I'm
know, maybe
driving the
Antonia
ship.
maybe Antonia never got married to anyone, like so you sort of like you make your own decision as to what like happens to them. But as far as I know, like I don't know what happens to them. And like some people get mad because we don't get resolution when it comes to them. And I've had people question that and come to me and be like, but what happens?
But
And
they're
I'm
not the
like, it's not
story.
really,
It's not
it's not a,
about them.
yeah. And it's like, would you actually get like, like fall in love with someone under the circumstances? I don't think so.
And this quickly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
yeah,
know
I
what
mean,
happens.
sometimes,
They go on an actual date and they fall in love.
yeah, maybe, like that's a possibility, but I never wanted their relationship. I wouldn't say this book is like a horror romance novel. Like I wouldn't really say that because I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that like the conventions of like what romance is or what it's supposed to be are there. They
Mhm.
just like, I will tell people like, have you ever gone out and like at a party and kissed someone? Like that's exactly what happens between them. Like
Right.
they kiss and they go on this adventure and that's fine, but nothing, maybe something came out of it, maybe it never did, like who knows.
I love a
Maybe I'll get
romantic
to
subplot.
yeah, maybe I'll write like a bonus chapter or something at some
Nice.
point just to like clear that out for people. But again, like um he's he's just her partner, and they are like, like they both, because he's not just like you said, he's not just like helping her for the sake of helping her. He
Right.
also has something that he's looking for beyond like his job and his story as a reporter or whatever. He has his own like personal stuff that he's trying to solve. So yeah, whatever happens between them might just be product of the circumstances and the stress, and they're attracted to each other, but nothing necessarily has to like come out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go
Or
ahead, Steph.
maybe, yeah.
Let's
Live your best
go.
life.
Kayla,
Live
do
your
you have
best life.
something else?
No,
Okay, solid.
you go. I figure you're probably going to ask all the questions I would ask anyway, so I'll let you do it.
What is the biggest challenge of writing a book in English when presumably living in Colombia that's not necessarily your first language?
um, oof. I mean, I learned to speak English when I was 2 years old. So I tell people that I pretty much, because I went to British school, so I
Oh.
pretty much learned to speak English and Spanish pretty much at the same time. And that's part of, I mean, I feel very lucky because of it, because it's taken me here and it's definitely like opened up doors for me. Um, but so I never really saw it as a challenge just because I grew up reading, like I didn't really read literature in translation, especially in school. I was reading, like English books. I was, like doing homework. It was all in English. Like I was only speaking Spanish at home. So it always felt like really natural for me. And then when I started, and then, like I graduated high school, and I went to live in Germany and I studied in Germany. And that was mostly in German and in English. So it doesn't really feel like a struggle, but
Mhm.
sometimes when I have like this really cool idea of like a line of dialogue or something, just like an expression that we use in Spanish,
Yeah.
I have a hard time like translating that feeling and that expression into English. Like
Some
that's
of them
really
don't translate. They don't.
exactly. They just lack the punch that the
Right.
expression might have in Spanish. So that's, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't really, there's definitely challenges because I'm living in Colombia. For example, I had events in New York City for the release of Bochica, but they were all canceled. We had to cancel because my publisher and I we had concerns about my safety for like me being Colombian and traveling to the U.S.
Hmm.
at this time, so we had to cancel that. So that was something where like me being in Colombia really like sucks because I
Mhm.
won't be able to be there like hopefully in the summer. But when it comes to like writing in English, like there's really like no, this is just like my job and I do this. Um and yeah, it's fine.
What
Um
language do you think in?
oh, I think both. Um and since my husband, he speaks English as well, and he's been again, he learned to speak English since he was like 2 or 3 years old. We sometimes speak in English because I don't know, it just go back and forth, like depending on what we want to say. It just
Hmm.
goes like back and forth between like English and Spanish, like Spanglish. Um, so yeah, it depends. I also speak Portuguese and I speak German.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, English and Spanish are the ones that I use the most just because I live here and I work as an author. So I have
Mhm.
a
Yeah.
lot of these like conversations with people all the time. And with my agent and my entire team is in the US and of course they speak English as well. So
Yeah, I mean, I struggle being in a like primarily English speaking country knowing Spanish. I still struggle sometimes with like I'm thinking in Spanish or I'll have a problem jumping between the languages because with my students and stuff, I have certain students in every class that like don't speak English very well. So I'm having to like speak Spanish to them, but then I'm speaking English to the rest of them. And there's certain points where it feels as though my wires are just like crossing and like
yeah.
electrocuting myself. Um so the fact that you're able to not only know all of these languages, but you're able to still come across like I've noticed that sometimes I feel like I lose some of my like personality if I'm speaking in a language I'm not as comfortable in
Yeah.
because I'm like focusing a little too much on like how to actually say something. And so it's nice to see people who maybe don't have that problem or have figured out how to navigate that problem. Um but yeah, I think being a Spanish speaking person in the publishing world, I think would probably add like a whole other layer of how it can be difficult, especially with how you were saying with your events and everything, which that really sucks. And if I
Yeah.
could single handedly make the US better, I promise I'd be
Um,
on it.
thank you. Well,
um,
I mean, I'm still having I have events planned, and hopefully, like the summer or the fall, like I'll be able to like still meet some of the things that we had planned. Um, but yeah, we just don't know, and I wouldn't like my publisher again, like they don't feel comfortable with me like coming, and I also don't like this is supposed to be such a special moment for me because it's my book and it's coming out, and we're all so
Yeah.
happy about it, but we don't want to have like this concerns.
fear. Yeah,
Yeah.
um so
That's
yeah, we'll
valid.
see, maybe like in the future if things get better, but right now it's not happening. So yeah.
and that's incredibly sad. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. I mean, yeah, what
Maybe you
can
guys
you
can
do?
do like virtual events.
Yeah, we have some lined up, and I'm glad they are like we again going back to the conversation, like to the early conversation. It's like being able to adjust and
Right.
change when things don't work out.
Hmm.
Because publishing is all about the good and bad surprises, and just like things you don't see coming, and you have to deal with them. And if you're not like able to adjust again, you're gonna have a much harder time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get that. I've asked all my questions. So this would be, unless
Yeah.
Kayla interrupts me, this would be the time where you can use it to promote anything. You can let them know where they can find you, how they can connect with you, anything like that.
Well, Bochica is coming out on May 13th. So almost like 2 weeks-ish from
Yeah.
today. Um, you can find me on mostly Instagram, which is where I'm most active. It's at Carolina Flórez author. And as far as like what I can share when it comes to the future, I'm not really allowed to say anything yet because publishing is also about like keeping
Yeah,
secrets.
secrets,
Yeah.
Uh,
privacy. Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes those secrets like you've been sitting on for like months or years, which makes it like even harder. But um, what can I say? There's definitely more horror coming from me and more Latinx horror.
Yay.
I always tell my agent how my dream would be to like take you around a haunted tour in Colombia.
Yeah.
Um, so like explore different destinations and different places that may or may not be haunted. So that's what I plan to do in terms of like my career, moving forward, at least in the next couple years. So yeah, Bochica is available for pre-order everywhere where books are sold. It's coming out in hardcover, audiobook, and ebook, so you can pre-order it everywhere. Support your local indie bookstores if you
Hmm.
can, if you have the
Yeah.
chance.
Frick Amazon. Don't buy
Um,
from Amazon. Anyways.
yeah. But you can also request it at your local library, if you're not able to like afford buying it, like that would be great as well. And hopefully I'll have more stuff to share in the future, when it comes to like more book stuff and events, and fun things to come. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's
you killed it.
thank you.
Well, thank you for being on this episode.
No, thank you. I feel like when was when did we plan this? I feel like
Yeah, it's been a
time
hot
went
minute in
by.
a making.
So long.
Yeah,
So long.
so
Because
long that
I listen,
it's
this gives you and the viewers a little bit of like a glimpse into the behind the scenes and stuff. But I have no impulse control
Correct.
when it comes to authors.
Correct.
Right. And so, like, I'll hear a story that's really cool, especially if it's like any sort of queer or Latinx or these things that we're really passionate about. And then I'll go, okay, I want to get them on the podcast. And then I'll like look at the release date and I'm like, these authors are killing it, but this book doesn't come out for another like 6 months. So suddenly I have, a date pinned down for like 7 months from now. But it's okay. I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yeah.
No,
But
it's
that's
good. It's really helpful because like if you wait up until like it's like closer to pub date, like right now, my schedule is all filled up. And I'm also in the middle of like moving um cities. I'm actually moving on Tuesday. So like if we hadn't booked this so far in advance, like I wouldn't know, oh, I can't leave this place today because I have this interview.
yeah,
Um so it's good. And I feel like even though I don't even remember when we first
so long.
like touch base, but um it's just like time goes by so fast.
Yeah.
And it feels like it was like months ago, but time
It was in
goes by so
January.
fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and here we are.
Literally January
So,
2nd. I started this year off hopping into author DMs, and I'm gonna end this
yeah,
year still hopping into author DMs.
I love that. And I'm so glad to, like have you have reached out to Maria and I, and we were both so excited for this episode and podcast. And I'm so grateful that you guys reached out and that you read the book and you're willing to promote it and that you seem
Mm,
to enjoy it. And it's so nice
Yes.
because like I feel like you guys get the book. It's
Yeah.
always nice when you find people who, like understand what you were trying to do with the book. I mean, it's always good when people like it because it was fun or entertaining or whatever. Like, that's great. And I'm so grateful for that. But when
Hmm.
you find people that understand what you were trying to do, that's even cooler. So
yeah.
thank you both
Thank
so much.
you.
No, thank you.
Books are
Uh,
political, y'all.
yeah, books are
Pay
Yay!
always
attention.
political. God,
Yes.
don't
And
make me
there's
yell it
no
at the
other
viewers
way.
again. I can't yell at the viewers every episode. They don't
Yes, you
like
can.
it.
Yes, you can.
um But viewers, this has been another episode of Margin Mavens. By the time you see this, this will actually be the last episode of season 2, which is incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
You will be dealing with, I think, a couple weeks of silence, unless
You're
you're on our
welcome.
social medias and everything. So you'll get a break from the yapping. And then we'll be starting up a season 3 a few weeks after this with some exciting changes and everything. But I will not tell you much because by the time we're recording this, we still have a lot of planning to do.
Spoilers.
Ha ha ha. But thank you guys for listening, and we will see you in the next season.